What's up guys? In my last video I showed you the Roslyn LSP and I showed you how it looks like a Neovim and that you can do Blazor programming with it. What I didn't show you was how to actually set it up, and this is what we're gonna do today. We're gonna have a new improved version of the how to get C# up and running in Neovim video that I made 5 months ago, but this time with the new LSPs, focusing on only the elements and tools and plugins that you need to get C# up and running. So by the end of the video you have working LSPs for Blazor and C#, you're gonna have syntax highlighting, you're gonna be able to debug and test your code, and I do believe that is all you would ever need to do with C#. So let's not waste any more time and let's jump in and get this thing done. So as you can see right here, I have two windows open. On the right side, I have the documentation that I've already written. The exact same thing as last time, except we're going to use Arch for the container instead of Ubuntu because it's a little bit easier with the dependencies and the packages. Those just work, and those are the packages basically that you should have installed on your Arch machine as well. Okay, on the left side, you have the machine that we're actually working on. And I have two Tmux windows. I have one that is called, you see right here, demo 2, and one is demo 1. And I have this for convenience for presenting everything to you because I have to switch from Neovim configuration to how it looks in C#. And the switching is a little bit easier if I have two Tmux windows. Okay, so I already have the Docker image based on this Docker file. What I'm going to do now is I have a Docker run. I run the container based on that image. So I go here. Paste that one right here. Now I just created a new container based on that image. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to switch into my other Tmux window, exec into that container that I just created. So now I have two Tmux windows that have the exact same container open. So next thing is I'm going to install NVChad. And for this tutorial, I'm going to stick to NVChad for two reasons. Number one is, if you are new to Neovim, which I suppose a lot of people are, then NVChad is a really good place to get started. Second reason is, if you're not new to Neovim, still, you're going to know what you're doing just by seeing those, even though if you don't have NVChad. So we're going to install NVChad right now. Just copy this one, go here, paste this one right here, boom. And we see that NVChad is working. Okay. Next section, configure Neovim for C#. First thing, we want to have syntax highlighting for C#, so therefore we're going to have to install Treesitter, and the way to do that is all the lazy NVim configuration, all the plugins that are loaded with lazy reside in plugins in Lua when you work with NVChad. So all we got to do is now for the Treesitter thing, copy this one, close this one right here, go into the Neovim configuration like so, cd into config nvim right here, open nvim, and now look for plugins in Lua. Go to the end of the file and paste this one. This is going to install the languages supported by Treesitter. You can also ensure inside all, then it would be installing all the languages there are, but we only need C# and Razor right here, basically, right? And a little bit of Lua, of course. And I'm going to close this one right now, open again. And proceed with the installation of the DLLs that we need with Mason. As opposed to LazyVim, Mason is not installing plugins. It's installing DLLs that are then used by plugins. And to get started, we need the Roslyn and the rzsl language server right here. And those are not default or standard Mason packages. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to load them from external registries, right? So you just put in those two lines, and at those, if you already have Mason installed, like this, these are the things that you have to consider. Okay, so for now, we gonna go copy this one, open plugins in Lua, go to the end of the file, and after installing, let's see, that's now doing the Treesitter thing. After installing Treesitter, we put Mason in place. Save this one. Next thing, then says inside Neovim execute Mason install all to install all these packages. And I do this right now. Oopsies. Now installs the packages. And you might notice that it only installs a couple of those that we defined here. I don't know why that is. It should install everything. If you have, I do believe it has something to do with Docker. On a normal machine, it just should install all these things. But the important thing is those ones are not installed with Mason install all. For some reason it doesn't, maybe because they're coming from external registries. So I put it here in the description as well. You have to install Roslyn explicitly like so. And now installs Roslyn. Now that we have the Roslyn DLL downloaded with Mason, that's cool, but we have to make it actually work in Neovim, and for that we need a plugin. I showed that in the last video. We need a roslyn.nvim plugin, and installation just through lazy like this. I copy this one right here, I go to the plugins in Lua, I go to the end of the file, paste that right here. After I did that, I tell the nvim lsp config that we have Roslyn now as a LSP. This is just a one-liner, thankfully. So again, I go to lsp config, go to the end of the file, paste that one right here, go to the formatting, and that is enough to get LSP support for C#. And to test this, we create a little console project. And now I'm going to change the tmux window, create that console. I open Neovim, boom, boom, boom. It's installing Roslyn as it should be. Close this one right now. Open the program CS, like any C# file basically. And you see that we have LSP support right here. Like the window is not big enough, but I can always go and say LSP info. And you see that we have an active client, Roslyn. So that looks good already. I go back to my actual C# file. I provoke a syntax error, and you see, as it should be, we have LSP support for that thing. The other thing I put in, just to really prove it's working, I have the, right here, we have the Lua go to definition kind of line. You would have a key map for that, just for the sake of the demo. I execute this, and I have to, of course, put the cursor into an actual method. Go to the definition of that method, and now you see what's actually kind of nice with Roslyn is, some of you might have seen my video where I explained how to get to third-party libraries, or like go to the definition of third-party libraries with OmniSharp. And this required a little bit of a hoop jumping, and we don't need this right now. Going to the definition of a third-party library is something you get completely for free with Roslyn, and it's one of the things that's really nice. Besides its obvious speed advantages, I digress, let's move on. We have the LSP for Razor section next. So just for now, we verified syntax highlighting and LSP support is working for C# files in Neovim so far. I move on. We have the Blazor section right here. And now what we're going to do is we're going to make the Rzsl language server working for Neovim as well. So I just follow along. I install the Rzsl language server with Mason, go back to the other tmux window, do this Mason install Rzsl language server, boom. Then essentially the same thing as we did before, we go into the plugins in Lua. And before we did this, so we're going to go to this section of the lazy vim plugins again. It's just like, this is the difference now. You have to add further configuration for the Roslyn language server, which can get a little bit tricky. That's why I put this explicitly here. So what you're going to do is, for Blazor, this is what you need to put into this section. I'm just going to copy everything. I'm going to go back, open the plugins in Lua, look for this section right here, and just overwrite this, okay? And this should be enough. Should it be enough? Scroll down, scroll down, scroll down. This is something that is documented under regarding GitHub pages anyway, so I'm not going to go into that right now. Just know for the moment, this is what is making it working, okay? Scroll down, and now we're going to test if Rzsl is actually working near them. I create another test project. I move back to the other tmux window, close this one right now, close this one right now too. create a Blazor project this time. Open Neovim. See it's already installing Roslyn, Razor. Open any Blazor component. I go for counter. And now in the counter component, and you see again, you have LSP support right here. So again, I go LSP info and see that we have an attached client that goes by name Razor language server. And to have proof of that, I can go and say, if I change the name of this thing, then you see that this one is not correct anymore, and the LSP shouts at me as it should be. Also, I get LSP support from the code brackets right here as well. Also, you can go to jump to the definition, like again, Lua, go to definition, and it jumps to definition. So the things that I showed in the other video already are working, and we can now move on to the debugging and testing in Neovim C#. So I move on to tutorial, set up Neovim for debugging and unit testing. I put the debugger in place with Mason install netcore. Go back to Neovim configuration, do a Mason install netcore. This is the debugger, which is a DLL again. It's a debugger for C#. I think it's written by Samsung or something. You can check it out on their GitHub page. It's written by Samsung. Not important for the moment. Important is we're gonna create two files, nvim-dap and nvim-dap UI. Copy this one, and we are again in our Neovim configuration. So I create those files for the Neovim configuration, touch those files, go back, and it says right here, paste these lines into the nvim-dap Lua. So I copy this one, open the dap Lua, boom. And what we get right here is we're going to load the executable. We're going to attach the executable that we just downloaded with Mason to the net core debugging adapter for normal debugging, meaning when you have any program CS or any normal C# file and want to debug that, you need this one. And the other thing is, if you want to debug unit tests, you need to attach the net core debugger from Samsung to the core CLR. You need to have those two here in place. We did this right now. The other thing you get key bindings that are similar to what you find in Visual Studio, you know, like F5 for debugging, F10 for stepping over, F12 for stepping into. These things right here, not too shocking. And then the last thing that we just pasted is you have the DAP configuration for C# files that kind of glues everything together. Okay, so next thing in the tutorial, yeah, of course we need a UI for the debugger, and for that we're going to take this code right here, go to the dap UI, paste this one right here, and do a little bit of formatting. And this is the absolute minimal configuration that you need to have a UI for the debugging. We don't do any configuration right here. I saved this for another video. The only thing that is doing is it's requiring the LazerBeam packages, and this stuff right here basically says, in the moment you start debugging, open the UI. In the end of the file, you just load everything by executing dap-ui.setup. Next thing in tutorial, configure Lua files for debugging. Yeah, same thing again. We have to load a couple of plugins, nvim-dap, DUI for the nvim-dap. This is what we just configured. We have to load this actually before we can require it right here. So these are just the LazyVim dependencies, plugins for debugging and testing in Neovim. We copy those. We go to plugins in the Lua, go to the end of the file, paste those into, and see what's next in tutorial. Yeah, of course, we have to require neotest in the startup for Neovim. So I go copy this one, open init Lua, not the plugins in init Lua, but the one in the root directory. Go to the end of the file, paste this one right here, save everything, and now we can see if it actually worked. So I go to the next section of tutorial, test, debugging, and unit testing. So we gonna go to the Tmux window, go to the console application, close everything, go to the console, Open Neovim for the console. You see the dependencies have been installed. I open the program CS. And now you see if I hit F9, it's a little bit small, but you get a little B for breakpoint. And now if I hit F5, it asks me for the DLL that I actually want to debug. Now I know it's my console DLL, and you see debugging is working. We have a breakpoint, we have the locals right here, we can go into that. You see the B turned into a little arrow. You can configure the UI. You can configure how all of this looks like, including the little symbols and the little emojis or whatever you have right here. But this is not part of this video. I will make a separate video for that. For now, you see everything is working. I hit F5 again to finish debugging, and now move on to the tutorial. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a test project to see if we can actually test our C# code. Again, I just close this project right here, copy this one, paste that right here, and we create an NUnit test. Open Neovim for the NUnit test project. And they should have a unit test 1 class right here. Everything good so far. LSP is working. And now I would like to go set a breakpoint. And with leader DT, which is a mapping that you just pasted into, try to debug that unit test. But then you see something right here that says no tests found. And this is something, if you came that far, everything should work. It's just until recently, there's a bug with neotest and Treesitter. So neotest doesn't recognize tests anymore. As I read on the internet, this has something to do with Treesitter. Just for the moment, the way to fix this right here, so actually our tests are recognized. What you do is you go to plugins in Lua, you go for the neotest section, and you put this line right here into the lazy configuration. What we need is we need a certain version of neotest so everything is working again. Right? So I go right here, copy this one, go back to the Tmux window, look for plugins in Lua, look for, there we go, neotest right here, paste this line, boom, 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 go lazy, you have it here in tutorial, go lazy, and hit capital U to update everything. And now it says neotest updated. It's actually downgraded, but it says, you know, since it's changed the version, it says updated in lazy. Never mind. I go back, reload my test project, go back to unit test. Go again, set a breakpoint, go lead T, and you see now it's working. You see now it's working. You get the debugging, it recognizes the tests, you get the debugging inside the unit test, you get the locals for everything. So that is working now as well. I don't know when they will fix this one right here, so you can just use the latest neotest. But this, I think this has been open for 2 weeks now and they didn't fix it. So I decided to mention this in this tutorial, even though it's temporary. I made a video a while ago about improving the debugging experience. And what I showed in that video was, if I go back to my console, do Neovim, I start the program, and try to debug, how to avoid having to hand pick the DLL that you actually want to debug. I want to have this automatically. I made a video about that, but in that video, I made you kind of program your own plugin. So what I did now in the meantime, I moved that to GitHub. And I made it a plugin on GitHub, and I called it the dap-dll-autopicker. And yeah, you can just easily install that now. So I'm gonna go to the installation part of that. I go to the Neovim, the lazy Vim plugin installation section. I copy this one right here. Go back to plugins in Lua, my Neovim configuration. I just go at the end of the file, put this plugin in. That is part one of the installation. The next part is I'm going to find my DAP configuration for C#. This is something we pasted in a minute ago. Look for this one, live grep. So I get this string. And you see, this is the old stuff that makes it necessary to manually pick the DLL, and we're going to replace this old stuff with this right here. Copy this one. Oopsies. So what it's doing, it's loading my module and executing the build DLL path method, which dynamically gets the path of the DLL that we're looking for, as explained in that other video. So this is just a kind of a shortcut to that. Save everything, go back, close everything, open the project again. See now my module is loaded. Open program, do the same dance, breakpoint, hit F5, and now it's just working. And I do believe when I scroll down now, there's nothing more on the tutorial right here, so we're finished right now. This is all you need for C#. So as you see, I put a debriefing section into the README, and I have 2 points right here, the latest .NET version. So for Arch Linux, it might be a little bit different than for Ubuntu or Fedora when it comes to installing the latest .NET. I experienced different distributions of Linux have different ways to install that. So for Arch, what I use to make sure I have the latest version, really make sure I have the latest version, I first go to the Arch wiki, and you have the section 1.2, you have the .NET install.sh. This is the official script from Microsoft to install .NET, the .NET SDK on Linux. You download that script, you make executable, and then you execute that script, and the important part is version latest. I experienced from time to time, version latest is not the actual latest version that is available. The way to fix that is, you go to the official .NET page, and there you see that the latest version right now is 9.90304. This is the actual latest version. What you would do then is you go and instead of latest, you use 9.0304. And this makes sure that you really have the latest .NET installed on your Arch system, which is necessary for things like C#, for example. Go back, next point. Topics not covered in this video. Yeah, we have formatting with conformance C#. I made a couple of videos that somehow had to do something with that, but I need to make a dedicated video about conformance C# and formatting and why we need that. The next thing is the inline diagnostics UI. I made a video about that. It's linked right here. And also in the end of this video or description or whatever, that shows you how to get a nice, beautiful UI for your inline diagnostics. Also, what we didn't cover is key mappings and how to configure the DAP UI to make it a little bit more pretty and a little bit less clutter. So there you go. This is how to set up C# for Neovim 2025 with the latest LSPs. I focused on the elements that are necessary for C#. I didn't talk about the plugins that I use, configuration, stuff like that. This is for other videos. And for the future, I'm planning on making more videos on my personal story, my transition from Visual Studio to Writer to eventually Neovim, and what's my motivation behind that. And also I'm going to give you workflows and tools that I use and configurations that I use to make this transition for you as smooth as possible. Basically making the videos that I wish I had when I started all of this. So thank you so much for watching. I wish you all a great week. Bye-bye.